Welcome to Meet the Press Now. I'm Monica Alba in Washington, where Republicans on Capitol Hill and the White House are zeroing in on a potential deal to end the travel chaos at airports around the country by funding TSA and the Department of Homeland Security as the shutdown enters day 39. According to 4 sources familiar with the negotiations, the path to a possible agreement involves a 2-step plan. First, by giving Democrats something that they might like, a framework to fund nearly all of DHS, except for the part of Immigration and Customs Enforcement that handled deportations, which Democrats are adamant needs major reform. Then Republicans would plan to use a budget maneuver to bypass Democrats to fund the rest of ICE, while also advancing the president's efforts to overhaul voting requirements. The big question right now, will it work? For Republicans, that begins with getting the president's support. Here's some of what he told reporters today about where negotiations stand.
Well, I'm going to look at it, and we're going to take a good, hard look at it. I want to support Republicans.
Would you be comfortable with a deal that involves separating ICE funding from the DHS funding package in order to reopen?
Well, they're working on all of that. You know, that's a detail that they'll explain later. I don't want to comment until I see the deal, but as you know, they're negotiating a deal. I guess they're getting fairly close, but I think any deal they make, I'm pretty much not happy with it.
That lukewarm message, however, is still a shift from just a day ago when the president insisted his party shouldn't make a deal until they pass sweeping legislation to overhaul elections in America, among other priorities.
I'm suggesting strongly to the Republican Party, don't make any deal on anything. The most important thing we can have is what's called the Save America Act. Don't make any deal on anything unless you include voter ID, and you have to be a citizen to vote. Republicans do not settle with Democrats and let them out of this hole that they've buried themselves in.
Senate Majority Leader John Thune today telling reporters that a visit by Senate Republicans to the White House last night was able to convince the president to get on board.
The president rejected a plan similar to this over the weekend. Why did he change his mind now?
Well, I think there are, obviously, maybe you can just say that my colleagues were more persuasive than I was.
Now, a source familiar with the negotiations says that Democrats are open to the proposal and are eager to fund DHS. But Democratic leaders today publicly voiced their frustration with the current state of play. Here's some of what they said.
This does not have any reforms in ICE, but they've sent us, negotiations are ongoing, and they've sent us an offer, and we'll be sending them an offer back. And I can assure you it'll contain significant reform in it.
We'll evaluate in good faith whatever is presented, but it's got to be consistent if it's going to deal with ICE, with the types of changes that are bold, meaningful, and dramatic.
All of it comes as hours-long lines persist at some of the nation's airports. The TSA call-out rate again surpassed 10% nationwide, pushing past 30% at some major airports. And as the administration deploys ICE agents to more than a dozen airports to help with those delays. Joining me now is our NBC News team, senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez. Julie Tsirkin is on Capitol Hill, and Aaron Gilchrist is talking to travelers at Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport in Atlanta. And with me on set, senior Homeland Security correspondent Julie Ainsley. Thank you all for being here. And Gabe, let's start with you. Can you first explain the president's apparent change of heart? Is what he was presented with last night actually meaningfully different than what Leader Thune presented him with over the weekend?
Well, Monica, it doesn't appear to be. You just heard Senator Thune right there that his colleagues are more persuasive. But look, I think that there's several other factors that are now in play here. Senator Mark Wade Mullen, for example, just confirmed last night as the Department of Homeland Security secretary. There was another hurdle to cross that happened last night. And also, look, the president watches a lot of television. He has been seeing those lines, those long lines at airports across the country. And so the political pressure is building here. And so it appears that the senators that came and spoke with the president yesterday were able to make a convincing case that it is in their interest to strike some type of deal. And the president doesn't really like to get involved in these details per se. You heard of him allude to that basically earlier today at the White House when he was asked about this, not wanting to get into the nitty-gritty of legislating of this particular deal. but seeming to want to blame Democrats for whatever for this process and why it's taking so long. And as long as he can claim a win on some of his priorities and call it that, then he may be willing to go along with this. But the White House basically saying that this is an acceptable solution thus far, but that negotiations are still ongoing, Monica.
Dan, it's minute by minute with the president, right, Gabe? Because he even said, well, he may not be happy with any deal. So is that an indication to you that this could still all totally fall apart? Well,
Monica, you know as well as I do, of course, we don't know that this will hold up. And the president, while he at first said he didn't want to comment on this, then he came out and he did comment, saying whatever deal they reach, he would be unhappy with. But again, he reverted back to his talking points about blaming Democrats here. If Republicans are able to get to some sort of deal that does have at least, portions of the Save America Act, perhaps through reconciliation, then that could be something that the president could latch onto and call it a win, even though Democrats might eventually get some of the ICE reforms that they had wanted.
And Gabe, the president has already kind of pitched that more expansive version you just referred to of the Save America Act than what currently exists. So if he does shrink it to get it through reconciliation, will that be enough to satisfy this priority of his, you think?
Well, certainly it's all about the messaging at this point. If he can come out and say that he stuck up for what he views as election security and can make the case to his base and to Republicans as a whole that he came out victorious here against the Democrats, then, that might be enough. But as we just discussed, the president will try to, say that he's not happy with the deal in general. But if he makes the case and that striking this deal will bring some relief to airports and not have to cave to the Democrats, then he may end up going along with it. But at this point, still up in the air, although multiple sources here in the White House and from our team, as we've been hearing from our team in Capitol Hill, they are sounding more optimistic. Monica.
And we will go to Capitol Hill next. Gabe, thank you so much for that. Julie, so I want to ask you, there is a path, it seems, but is there enough buy-in here from both sides of the aisle to make it happen?
And that's really the key question right now. While it seems like Republicans at least agreed upon something among themselves, although I'm not so convinced about that, because after the Senate Republicans met behind closed doors a couple of hours ago, Monica, and had lunch, some of them came out and were frustrated that they aren't fully funding ICE. They're funding about $5 billion of the overall $10 billion package. They're not funding enforcement, as you see there on your screen. So there might be some tension points within the Republican Party as well. But within the Democratic side of the aisle, this morning I talked to sources who thought for sure that in this proposed deal from Republicans, they would include some of those reforms that the White House had already agreed to when it comes to immigration enforcement. But turns out, according to Leader Schumer, those reforms are not in there. So for now, they're holding out as well.
Okay, so that's on the Senate side of things. What are the chances, if it does go through there, that it can then get through the House?
Well, that's the other wrinkle in all of this, because Speaker Johnson is dealing with a very different collection of Republicans, if you will, than on the Senate side. And there is some heartburn because the Senate does tend to jam the House, especially when it comes to funding matters as crucial as these. So for the House perspective, let's take a listen to Speaker Johnson, and we'll talk about it more on the other side.
Are you supportive of a DHS funding bill that doesn't include funding for ICE?
That is not my preference. I can tell you the House has funded DHS twice. We're prepared to do it again, completely fund the entire department. That is a responsible way to do this thing, so we've been very resistant to any idea to break it apart.
They might be resistant about it, but if the president does get behind this effort and starts working the phones and calling up Republicans, as we know that he's done many times in the past, I think if this passes the Senate, it would eventually get through the House. But I think the question of the president's support is an interesting one. It was about 30 hours ago where I was at an event with the president in Memphis, where he told a room of law enforcement officials, right at an airport, I might add, that he is not going to accept a deal from Democrats, instructing his allies not to make one. And then today we heard those comments from him, lukewarm, but privately I'm told that he did agree with Senate Republicans last night for this exact proposal.
Yeah, both sides may be looking for an off-ramp there. Julie, can I just also ask you, we saw that in-person meeting at the White House last night. So does that tell you that there was a sense that Republicans were going to be willing to buck the president if they felt like they couldn't get the White House on board?
That's an interesting question. We know that Leader Thune tried convincing President Trump over the weekend to get behind this deal, but we also know that White House allies wanted this deal, at least some of them. We know that many of them were on Capitol Hill trying to negotiate this and bring a solution to this because Republicans are in charge. The president, by effect of what he said for the last couple of days, would own a shutdown if it were to continue, especially in those airports. I know you'll talk to Aaron about, but I think when it comes to Republicans bucking President Trump, we haven't seen that happen many times, but certainly their patience could run thin. Monica?
Julie, thank you so much for that perspective. Aaron, we will go to you next since you are there in Atlanta, which has seen one of the highest TSA call-out rates. How are things looking there today?
Well, things have actually been looking pretty good here today, Monica. I think we talk about the early morning hours, which are the busier hours at this particular airport, and we did see a crush of people, lines snaking outside the airport terminal, even in the pre-check line. But the reality since about 8 o'clock this morning has been this is a very normal-looking airport. You may see behind me here, this main checkpoint has been virtually empty for the last little while. At different points during the day, we've seen the volume sort of increase a little bit, but nothing like what we saw yesterday, over the weekend, and into last week, where we saw lines snaking through the airport terminal. At the same time, people who've been looking to travel have been coming here with the understanding that conditions could change at any moment. And so people have been getting here earlier than they might otherwise get here to just sort of be prepared for a long line and to have to wait a while. Let me let you hear from a few passengers that we spoke to a bit earlier today about their travels as they were coming into this airport.
We're a little bit worried about when we leave here next week.
Do you have a plan yet for that?
Get here early.
So you just sort of grin and bear it, huh?
Grin and bear it. That's all we can do.
I wouldn't recommend traveling right now if you don't have to, especially if you have kids. I mean, it's a lot. It is very overwhelming right now, so.
And what do you make of the fact, I mean, obviously we know a lot of the TSA agents have not been working or calling out because they're not being paid. What do you think about that part of this drama?
I mean, I feel bad for them. I understand. I get it. I mean, gas is high. Everything is high. I mean, we all want to get paid. I mean, that's just where we're at with it.
Now, a lot of airports that had been telling people to check their websites for wait times have stopped posting wait times because they were just inaccurate. They were so unpredictable for several days. It is worth noting, though, that the one of the airports in Houston, George Bush Intercontinental Airport, does still post wait times on their website, and they've been showing all day long 4-hour waits for people who are going into that airport. So, Monica, I think it really does depend on when you're traveling and what airport you're going to, whether all the security checkpoints are open or not, and that's something that has been less and less predictable because the call-outs happen as a matter of what shift is coming in. So they may not know that they have fewer TSA officers until it's time for them to be here, and they don't show up, and then the lines can get long again.
4 hours. Wow, that is staggering. Aaron, I do want to ask you specifically there in Atlanta where you are, have the travelers that you've checked in with told you whether they feel like the presence of ICE agents is maybe making a difference in some of those lines and the changes you're seeing today?
Yeah, we have heard from people about that, and I think most people have just sort of noticed that the ICE agents are in the airport. I can tell you for the last hour or so that we've been in this particular area near the main checkpoint, we haven't seen any of those ICE agents walk by, and the ones that we have seen as we've been moving around the airport have just sort of been walking around or standing together in groups. We know that they cannot run the X-ray machines at the TSA checkpoint here, but we were told that they could help with crowd control, that they might be able to check IDs, but we haven't seen them engage in any of the TSA operations at this particular checkpoint behind me. I was at LaGuardia yesterday afternoon. We didn't see them engaging in those operations there either. And so at this point, we know they're in the building, and that's about all we can say, Monica.
Aaron, thank you so much for bringing us that from Atlanta. We really appreciate it. We're going to turn now to Julie Ainsley, who covers DHS, and I want to just get your expertise. The new DHS secretary, who was just sworn in today, should we expect major changes to the administration's immigration policy, or do you see these recent staffing changes of who's at the top as mostly a rebrand?
I think that the rebrand began on January 24th, and that was the day that Alex Preddy was fatally shot in Minneapolis. After that, we saw Greg Bovino, who was the commander of Border Patrol leading those surges in those cities, be pulled off. They put in Tom Homan, and Tom Homan is remaining in that place as borders are. He told me that he thought that if they did not conduct targeted arrest, meaning of criminals who they knew to be criminals, rather than people who merely were in the country illegally, they could lose the faith of the American people. And that seems to be the same brand and same mantra that we're seeing carry through. Now, Markwayne Mullin was someone who was chosen who could be an easy pick, and you could see how quickly he moved through. Trump gave a March 31st exit date for Secretary Noem, and instead here we are on March 24th. He's already there. And so I think what we're seeing now is a pivoting in this administration, and you, of course, would know well at the White House covering that as well, of trying to really get away from the immigration enforcement issue as a top talking point and to try to have someone at DHS who can command the helm, keep the lights on, try to get this agency back up and running, but who isn't going to cause a lot of drama. He even said in his nomination hearing, I don't want this agency to be the top headline every day.
Which it was.
It was
many of those headlines from your own reporting, we should point out, exclusives that you broke. Let's talk about the funding deal that is on the table right now that would potentially fund just part of ICE. How would that work, and how complicated would that make the current operations?
Yeah, it's not something I'm familiar with exactly procedurally how they could do that. You typically fund an agency as a whole, like a department like DHS. But just to put in perspective of how much money ICE has right now, they previously walked into this administration with a $9 billion operating budget. The One Big Beautiful Bill increased that to $75 billion. Of course, that's over 2 years. That doesn't mean it's going to be what they get on a recurrent basis, but they are the most well-funded law enforcement agency in the country. So it stands to reason they could get by without having an infusion through more money coming through a dedicated annual funding bill. And so obviously that seems like a palatable choice for a lot of people right now, hoping they could come back around to ICE later. And maybe if they give it some time and let Markwayne Mullin stay there for a little while, Democrats could come around to this period, to the table as well on this.
Julia Ainsley, thank you so much for being here today. We appreciate it. And now we will turn to the president of the American Federation of Government Employees, the union which represents TSA workers, Everett. Kelley, Everett, if you can hear me,
yes,
if you have him. There you are. Yes, thank you so much, sir. Yes, I can. Hopefully you can hear us. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Can you
help
us?
Very faint.
Oh, okay. We'll try to see if we can get that worked out technically. Can you hear me a little bit better now?
I think I can.
Okay, well, let's start with this and the potential deal that is on the table right now to fund most of DHS, which, of course, is impacting many of the workers that your union represents. What do you make of the current deal?
Okay, you're very faint on me, but I think I understand you. This is very disturbing for the people that I represent. We are now in day 39 of this shutdown. And what does 39 days look like for the people that protect this country? More than 400 TSOs has quit, 1,000 more calling out because they cannot afford to get gas, get to work. And so what I want to say is this: if there is a deal on the table, then bring it forth, sign this legislation, and let's get these employees paid so they can continue to protect Americans as they travel safely.
Well, the president was asked if he had a specific message for those TSA workers who are staying home right now amid this shutdown. Take a listen to his answer. We'll talk about it.
Well, some of them are needing money, because the Democrats cut off their money. I blame the Democrats more than anything else.
The president blaming Democrats there, and we have heard stories from some TSA workers who have had to get their cars repossessed, sell plasma, who are concerned with tax day around the corner, how they're going to make those payments. What's your response to the president's comments there?
Well, I don't think that we're at a point where we should be pointing fingers at anyone. I think that this is a time for the nation to come together. This is a time for legislators to come together and think about, the fact that these are human beings. These are their lives. These are people that are losing their home, losing their automobile, losing the opportunity to come to work and do the work that they want to do for the American people. So I don't think this is a time to be pointing fingers. This is a time for us to come together. And if there is some legislation that we can pass to make sure that America continues to operate the way it should, then that's what we should be doing.
Well, let me ask you specifically, do you blame one party then over the other for this shutdown, which has been dragging on for almost 40 days now?
I don't think that I should be blaming any party over the other because, like I said, it's the United States Congress that needs to do their job. I employ all of them to do their job. If they do their job, then we wouldn't have these crises. So it's not one party over the other. It's collectively, what we do as the legislative branch. Let's get the job done. And to think about, the possibility of Easter coming and some of them leaving and going home, I submit to them that they need to make sure that these employees are paid prior to leaving, going home for Easter.
Well, DHS has reported that more than 450 TSA officers have quit since the start of this partial shutdown, and those call-out rates we've been talking about topping 10% nationwide. Are you worried that more workers could quit, and how difficult will it be to replace them?
You have to understand what these employees are facing. This is the third time in 6 months that they have been without pay. And certainly they have to provide for their families. So I am afraid that if we don't put a stop to this shenanigan, then we will see more and more people quitting their job. We'll see, and it'll be hard to recoup those people once they are out of the system. And I don't want to see a system failure, but I do think that that's what some people are planning on. But if we can get these people paid, get people back to work, I don't think we'll have these issues to worry about.
And you have been critical of President Trump's decision to send those ICE agents to assist TSA at the airports we've been talking about, saying that they don't have the proper training. DHS says that the agents are actually being tasked with non-specialized security functions, just like guarding exit doors or crowd control, and that they're making announcements. But considering the shortages, is that help needed? Is it welcome?
Well, if that was real help, from what I'm seeing and understanding, they're just walking through, maybe helping people, get in and out of cars, passing water out. There's nothing really that they're doing to assist the TSA agent that have this specialized training. They go through at least 6 months of specialized training, and they need that in order to be effective and efficient on the job. And these agents, while not meant to be disrespectful, they just don't possess the skills needed to perform these duties.
Everett, Kelley, thank you so much for bringing us that and the perspective of those TSA workers. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.